The boarding call echoed across Gate 47 era just as Serena Blake slipped through the crowd. Hoodie up, eyes shadowed with fatigue. Flight 2236 was her first real moment of silence in weeks. A red eye from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. Booked under a fake name, paid in cash, and upgraded with an encrypted favor. She didn't expect comfort, just distance. Distance from the headlines, the operations, the faces of the children she'd pulled from steel containers on the outskirts of Nevada. She'd just closed the largest trafficking case of her career. 38 survivors rescued, one major supplier arrested, and 2 federal agents exposed as traitors. But none of that mattered here. Tonight, she was just another tired woman trying to get home. Seat 3A, first class, a splurge, but necessary. She slid into the leather seat and pulled her backpack close, eyes scanning the aisle. Everything looked routine. Flight attendants moved with mechanical grace. Passengers murmured into phones or scrolled through screens. Then came the interruption. "Excuse me," said a smooth, confident voice. "I believe you're in my seat." She looked up. The man standing before her was in his late 40s, dressed in a navy Tom Ford suit with silver cufflinks and the polished smugness of someone who'd never been told no. His skin was pale, his hair salt and pepper, and his tone, while polite, dripped with expectation. Serena held up her boarding pass. 3A, he frowned. "That's not possible. I always book the window on this route." The way he emphasized always made it sound like policy, not preference. A nearby flight attendant approached with a practiced smile. "Is everything okay?" Serena nodded. "Yes, just a seating confirmation." The man handed over his ticket with a flourish. The attendant checked both passes and gave a quick nod. "Mr. Langston, you're in 3B. Ms. Blake is in 3A. For a moment, his smile cracked. Just a flicker. Then he exhaled sharply through his nose and stepped aside, motioning with one hand. "Of course." He took his seat beside her and began wiping the shared armrest with a personal sanitizing cloth, meticulously erasing a line that hadn't been crossed. Serena opened her book of biography of Angela Davis and angled it away from him. After a few minutes of tense silence, he glanced sideways. "Angela Davis," he noted. "Interesting choice." She didn't look up. "I read Women Who Don't Flinch." He gave a dry chuckle. "No comment." As the cabin doors closed and the safety demo played, Serena leaned back, but her body never relaxed. Not fully. Something about Langston didn't feel right. Not his tone, not his movements, not the way he looked at her like she didn't belong in the seat she'd paid for. She didn't know yet that his name would appear again, on encrypted files, offshore accounts, and international arrest warrants. She just knew this flight was going to change everything. The seatbelt signs blinked off as Flight 2236 leveled out over the Pacific. The hum of the engine settled into white noise, but inside Serena Blake's mind, the noise was just beginning. Derek Langston hadn't spoken since takeoff, but his silence wasn't peace. It was performance-tight shoulders, stiff posture, and carefully hidden side glances. Serena was used to this kind of discomfort. It didn't surprise her, but it never stopped stinging. He broke the silence with a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "You know, it's funny," he said, leaning slightly toward her. "I've flown this route every Thursday for the past 5 years, and I've never seen them assign that seat to, well, someone new." Serena didn't look at him. The airline must be expanding its definition of belonging. Langston chuckled, clearly caught off guard by her answer. No offense intended. I just meant I'm used to familiarity. That's all. Familiarity isn't the same as entitlement, she said calmly, eyes still on her book. I didn't say I was entitled. You didn't have to. He sat back with a huff, opening a tablet with exaggerated motion. The glow from the screen lit up his face in pale blue, but the sharp edges of discomfort still clung to his features. Serena wasn't trying to provoke him. She simply refused to shrink. Minutes passed. The flight attendant came down the aisle with drinks. Can I offer you something, sir, on scotch? Glenfiddich, if you have it. Langston replied without looking up. And for you, ma'am, ginger ale? Serena said. The attendant handed her the can and smiled warmly. Serena returned it, grateful for a moment of simple kindness. But as the cart rolled past, Langston gave a sideways glance. Ginger ale. That's a safe choice. Serena didn't respond. You don't talk much, do you? Only when I have something worth saying. Another beat of silence. Then commotion. Several rows behind them. I won't sit there, a shrill voice called out. Move me now. Serena turned slightly in her seat. A middle-aged white woman stood in the aisle, pointing at a young man who looked Middle Eastern. He stood awkwardly near his seat, clearly caught in a storm he didn't create. Do you know what his people did? The woman shouted. I don't feel safe. The man tried to speak. I'm a medical student. I don't care. A passenger's turned. Flight attendants moved quickly to de-escalate. Langston leaned toward Serena and muttered, This is what air travel has become. She didn't answer. He tried again. I remember when flying was civilized. Civilized for whom? She asked. He shifted uncomfortably, but didn't reply. Serena stood. She walked back toward the commotion, stepping past stunned passengers, past prejudice disguised as panic, until she reached the young man's row. I'll switch with him, she told the flight attendant. The woman blinked. Ma'am, you don't have to. I know, but I'm doing it anyway. The man looked at her, eyes wide with disbelief. Are you sure? Yes, she said gently. Let her sit with her fear. Serena took the seat next to the angry woman. The young man moved forward, grateful but shaken. The woman turned to Serena. You people always make things about race. Serena tilted her head slightly. Funny. I thought you did that. I'm 71. The woman snapped. You don't talk to me like that. I talk to you like a grown adult, Serena replied. Your age doesn't excuse your ignorance. The woman turned away. Serena leaned back and closed her eyes. Back in row 3, Derek Langston watched her in stunned silence. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more, the way she stood up for a stranger, or how easily she saw through him. He took a long sip of scotch and stared out the window, but the reflection staring back didn't look so certain anymore. Serena Blake didn't need to shout. She embodied resistance. And for the first time in a long time, Derek wondered if he was sitting beside the most dangerous kind of person. Not a threat, a reckoning. The cabin lights dimmed to a cool blue as Flight 2236 sailed smoothly into the night sky. Somewhere over Colorado, the silence inside the plane was broken only by the occasional cough, the low rumble of engines, and the muted chime of call buttons. Serena Blake had returned to her original seat in 3A, leaving the older woman and coach stewing in her own unease. The young man Tarek had thanked her quietly before settling in. But Serena wasn't thinking about that now. She was thinking about Derek Langston. He hadn't spoken to her since she returned. He sat stiffly beside her, eyes locked on his tablet, pretending to read. But the occasional glance, the flicker of his brow, the tension in his jaw, they all told a different story. She had seen this before. In military contractors who had something to hide. In politicians just before indictments. In agents who knew their covers were about to be blown. Something about Langston was off. And her instincts honed by years chasing traffickers, money launderers, and men who smiled through lies were beginning to scream. She pulled out her encrypted device, a modified satellite phone linked to a private NSA subnetwork. Her thumbs moved quickly as she drafted a message. Subject, Derek Langston. Possible link to case. 7729, Operation Widow's Nest behavior. Suspicious. Multiple inconsistencies. Cross-reference with Walter Simmons, see attached. Request urgent background scan. She hit send, then leaned back. 10 minutes later, a soft ding alerted her. Response received. Confirmed Langston, Your Honor, CEO. Langston Medtrans Logistics under quiet investigation. Suspected use of medical transport routes for trafficking synthetic opioids and smuggled persons. Walter Simmons, one charger and former partner, disappeared 2 years ago after filing whistleblower notice. Proceed with extreme caution. Do not engage. Local field team mobilizing for intercept upon landing. Serena exhaled slowly. Walter Simmons. That was the name of the elderly man who had collapsed in the aisle nearly 2 hours ago. She had seen his ID when helping stabilize him. At the time, it barely registered. But now it was the link. Langston's former partner. On this flight, alive. And Langston hadn't just recognized him. He had tried to hide it. Serena remembered it clearly now. The moment Walter was taken off the plane, Langston had subtly turned away, speaking quietly to a flight attendant, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. But now she knew what it had to be. Containment. Damage control. If Simmons talked, if he survived, Langston's empire could fall. And if Langston was willing to risk exposure to keep him silent, then the conspiracy was far deeper than a single corrupt executive. Serena leaned toward him slightly, her tone casual. You seem tense. Langston didn't look up. Long day. Sure, she said. Can't be easy seeing a ghost from your past on a red-eye flight. He flinched. It was subtle, but it was there. She smiled slightly. Walter Simmons, wasn't it I noticed your reaction? Recognized him. Didn't you? Langston's lips parted, but no words came. I hope he makes it, Serena continued. Seems like he has a lot of unfinished business. Langston turned to her, then, his voice quiet, controlled. I think you're reading too much into something that's none of your concern. Maybe, she said, still calm. Or maybe I'm exactly the kind of person who gets curious when powerful men sweat through first class. He faced forward again, jaw tightening. Serena leaned back and whispered to herself, Got you? From her seat, she pulled out a small notebook and began sketching timelines. Langston's career, Walter's disappearance, the rise of Langston Medtrans, the collapse of 3 competing firms in South America, and a series of unaccounted medical shipments traced back to Eastern Europe. It was all connected, and the man sitting inches from her had built it on silence, fear, and secrets. But tonight, on Flight 2236, that silence was breaking. Charlotte Douglas International Airport blinked under pre-dawn light as Flight 2236 taxied to a remote terminal. Passengers grumbled about the delay. The captain explained over the intercom that an emergency medical situation had forced the detour. But Serena Blake wasn't annoyed. She was alert. Walter Simmons, the unconscious whistleblower, was being removed from the plane by paramedics, two men in crisp uniforms, moving with practiced ease. Too practiced. Serena remained seated, watching through the window as they loaded Walter into a waiting ambulance. Something felt wrong. Their posture, the unmarked vehicle, no hospital ID tags on their gear. They're not medics, her instincts whispered. Across the aisle, Derek Langston stood and calmly retrieved his carry-on. His expression was unreadable, but she saw his hand tremble when he thought no one was watching. As passengers began to disembark, Serena moved fast. She ducked behind a support pillar near the jet bridge exit and pulled out her encrypted phone. Urgent Simmons being extracted. Suspected impersonation of EMS. Vehicle unmarked. Langston visibly shaken. Request immediate confirmation of hospital route and real EMS dispatch. No reply. She sent it again. Nothing. That was the second red flag. She called her direct line to Assistant Director Charles Morrison. He picked up after 2 rings. Blake. Report. Sir, Walter Simmons is being removed by unknown actors posing as medics. I believe an extraction is in progress, possibly orchestrated by Derek Langston. There was a pause. Stand down, Morrison said. Serena frowned. Excuse me. You're off the case. What case? She asked, voice low. The trafficking op you just closed. You did your part. This is being handled now. Serena's stomach dropped. You knew Simmons was alive? This is bigger than you realize. Blake, walk away. The line went dead. And just like that, she knew. Her own agency was compromised. She moved. Cutting through the gate area, she spotted Langston by the security checkpoint, surrounded by 2 men in TSA uniforms. But their uniforms were too clean. Their boots didn't match regulation issue, and one of them had the unmistakable stance of a trained mercenary. Langston glanced back. Their eyes locked. Then he turned sharply and followed the men through a side exit marked Authorized Personnel Only. Serena sprinted after them. Federal agent, she shouted, flashing her badge. Stop right now. But the door shut in her face, magnetic lock engaged. She pounded on it, breath sharp, adrenaline surging. From the corner of her eye, she saw another figure moving quickly through the terminal. It was the elderly woman from the flight, Margaret Holloway. But now, she walked with purpose. Her purse was slung across her chest, one hand inside it, and she was speaking softly into what looked like a hearing aid. Comms device, Serena realized. She followed. Ma'am, ahoy, she called out. Stop. The woman didn't. Stop right now. When Serena caught up, Margaret turned and tried to pull something from her purse. Serena tackled her to the ground. The object fell and slid across the polished floor, a small, suppressed pistol. Gasps erupted around them. A nearby airport guard drew his weapon. Serena raised her badge. Federal agent. This woman is part of an attempted abduction. Secure the weapon. I need access to your surveillance room. Now. In the airport's low-lit security control room, Serena reviewed the feeds. There Langston and the imposters exiting through service corridors. Moving fast. Coordinated. She zoomed in on the taller man beside him. Freeze frame. His face turned just enough. Serena's heart dropped. Martin Kellner, former Special Forces, now private security director at Langston Medtrans, suspected in multiple overseas black ops extractions. No official charges, only sealed reports. She turned to the security chief. They're not agents. They're mercs. You just let a federal witness be abducted under your roof. The chief nodded grimly. What do you need? Every exit, every door. Shut it down. And get me a direct line to any agent you do trust. Because I don't know how high this goes anymore. She stared at the frozen image on the screen. Langston was running, but not from her, from the truth. And she was done chasing shadows. Now, she was going to drag them into the light. Charlotte Airport pulsed with a strange calm, the kind that settles right before a storm breaks. Beneath the artificial lights and polished floors, Serena Blake moved with quiet purpose, flanked by two uniformed officers who still weren't entirely sure what they had stepped into. Margaret Holloway, the elderly woman Serena had just disarmed, sat secured in an interrogation room with hands cuffed and expression unreadable. Her calm demeanor hadn't cracked, not even when the suppressed pistol was bagged and tagged. If anything, she looked amused, like she'd played this game before. Serena leaned in. Who are you really? Margaret tilted her head. A consultant. Retired. You wouldn't understand my clearance level. Try me. The woman's eyes twinkled. You're wasting time. Agent Blake. By now, Langston is halfway to wherever his extraction team planned to vanish. You're very confident for someone in cuffs. Well, you're very naive for someone still wearing a badge, Margaret countered. Serena's jaw tensed. You're going to tell me everything, or I'll put you on the next flight to Quantico in leg irons. Margaret smiled thinly. They'll never let you make it that far. Before Serena could respond, her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted signal, one only two people in the world still had access to. She opened the message. Surprise. I'm still alive. Come alone. Utility Tunnel 3B. 10 minutes. W. Her heart jumped. Walter Simmons. Alive. She stared at Margaret. You'll wait here. The woman shrugged. I'm not going anywhere. Serena descended into the belly of the airport beneath terminals, through staff-only service halls and concrete stairwells marked with faded emergency paint. Utility Tunnel 3B was more of a crawl space than a hallway, lit only by dim overhead bulbs that flickered like bad memories. She found him standing beside a broken conveyor belt. Walter Simmons, pale, leaner than she remembered, but alive and sharper than ever. I wasn't sure you'd come alone, he said. I wasn't sure you were real, Serena replied. I almost wasn't. They didn't hug. They didn't smile. There wasn't time. How did you get away, she asked. A kid helped me. One of your passengers, medical student, Muslim. I heard the woman scream at him. Then I saw you switch seats. Serena blinked. Tariq. Walter nodded. He spotted something was off with the fake EMTs, followed us, distracted them long enough for me to run. I've been hiding ever since. And Langston, panicked. He's running blind now, but not far. The Atlanta facility, they'll try to move everything before the media gets wind. Everything, records, money, product, victims. Serena exhaled. You have proof. Walter pulled a hard drive from inside his coat. Names, dates, shipments, tied to Kinex Holdings and 3 senators. But if we don't get it out soon, they'll erase it. You trust me with this. I trusted no one, he said, until I saw you call out Margaret in front of half the airport. Back upstairs, Serena returned to the surveillance room. She opened a new encrypted line and called someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. The voice on the other end was cautious. Who is this? It's Blake. A pause. You've got to be kidding. I need a favor. The person laughed bitterly. Last time we talked, I was told never to mention your name again. Well, I just detained a federal asset, prevented the abduction of a whistleblower, and I'm sitting on evidence that could burn $12 billion networks to ash. Another pause. Then, where do you want the drop, Atlanta? Langston's warehouse. We take it before they sanitize the trail. I'll assemble a ghost team. But Blake? Yeah, watch your 6. If this goes bad, they won't just erase files. They'll erase you. As she hung up, Serena turned back toward the glass window, looking out onto the terminal. People moved like nothing was happening. Langston was still out there. But so was she. And now she wasn't hunting alone. She was building something stronger than fear. A resistance. Utility corridors rarely felt claustrophobic to Serena Blake. She was used to shadows, tight spaces, and low ceilings. But this time, every step felt heavier, every echo sharper. She led Walter Simmons and Margaret Holloway, still bound through the back halls of Charlotte Airport, away from prying eyes and compromised systems. She didn't trust anyone outside her circle, not since Assistant Director Morrison had told her to stand down, and not since she realized he was part of the rot. They approached a side stairwell that led to the tarmac part of an old freight route shut down years ago. That made it perfect for an exit or an ambush. Walter wheezed beside her, struggling to keep pace. They're watching all exits. You know that, right? I'm not walking us out, Serena replied. I'm walking us through. She stopped in front of a maintenance access door and tapped a silent signal into her phone. Within seconds, a reply came. Ready. Door access granted. 3 minutes. She looked at Margaret. You so much as twitch. I'll make you regret it. Margaret just smiled. They won't let you win. Agent Blake. Not against Kinex. Not against the directorate. Serena's eyes narrowed. You think I'm trying to win? The door clicked open. I'm trying to expose. They entered a wide, dimly lit storage tunnel filled with decommissioned luggage conveyors. Walter and Serena kept to the shadows, but even before they reached the midpoint, Serena felt it. Movement. Not in front of her, behind. Gunfire exploded down the tunnel, lighting the walls in flashes of orange and white. Down, Serena shouted, grabbing Walter and pulling him behind a broken crate. A bullet struck a metal beam inches from her face. Sparks burst. Margaret screamed, half real, half performance. Serena returned fire, counting her rounds. 3 left. A voice shouted from down the tunnel. "Give us the drive, Blake, and we'll let the old man live," Walter shouted back. "Tell Langston he's already lost." Serena turned to Walter. "Stay low. When I run, follow the cables to the backup door. You see the green light? You don't wait for me. You go." Walter looked ready to argue, but then nodded. "What about her?" he asked, gesturing to Margaret. Serena smirked. "She's my shield." She yanked Margaret to her feet and pushed forward, using the older woman as cover. Margaret cursed, but Serena didn't flinch. She advanced through bullets, her training kicking in like muscle memory. Every step was timed, every shot calculated. One man dropped, another ducked. Serena dove behind a pillar and reloaded. From the darkness ahead came a low command. "Push in." "She's boxed." Serena pulled her last trick smoke. From her pocket, she popped a capsule. Gray fog flooded the corridor, buying precious seconds. She sprinted through the haze, gun drawn, heart thundering. A figure lunged at her from the left. Serena elbowed him, twisted his wrist, and slammed him against the wall. His weapon clattered. She didn't look back. She just ran. Walter was at the door when she arrived, panting, pale but still on his feet. He held the emergency handle, waiting. Serena yanked it open. Bright tarmac lights spilled through as alarms wailed in the distance. She shoved Margaret forward and followed Walter out into the open air. A black SUV skidded to a stop. Behind the wheel, Tarek, the med student who had saved Walter. "You said you needed a ride," he called out. "Bless your timing," Serena muttered, throwing the back door open and helping Walter in. As they pulled away, Serena glanced back. Through the chain-link fence, she saw agents, real or fake. She couldn't tell pouring out of the building. But they were too late. 30 minutes later, in a secure Helix safe house just outside the city, Serena sat on the edge of a worn leather couch. Walter rested in a chair nearby. Margaret was locked in the basement, alive, restrained, and seething. Serena opened her laptop and began uploading the contents of Walter's drive to 3 mirrored servers. One in Berlin, one in Nairobi, one in Toronto. The truth was leaving the shadows. She turned to Tariq. "You didn't have to come back for us." He shrugged. "People like her tried to make me feel small my whole life." He nodded toward the basement. "Helping you expose them feels right." Serena looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes. Conviction. This wasn't just her fight anymore. The circle was breaking, and she was no longer alone. The Helix safe house sat nestled in the woods just outside Raleigh, North Carolina, discreet, heavily surveilled, and lined with backup generators and blackout curtains. No one knew its location unless they were meant to. Serena Blake stood in front of the window, sipping black coffee and watching the rain slice through the trees like static on a forgotten signal. The adrenaline from the airport shootout had worn off hours ago. What remained was a sharp clarity, cold, calm, and precise. Walter Simmons had finally fallen asleep on a cot in the back room. Tariq had posted himself at the basement door, keeping watch over Margaret Holloway with a steadiness Serena hadn't expected from someone his age. But this fight was growing him fast. And her, she was shifting, too. Not out of fear, but because she now knew the system she once defended had teeth turned inward. By mid-morning, The leak went live. Helix's mirrored servers released Walter's evidence packet in full, 312 pages of transaction logs, surveillance footage, coded memos, and emails implicating Kinex Holdings, Langston Medtrans, and several high-level political operatives. The media dubbed it the Consortium Papers. Cable networks scrambled. Twitter imploded. Hashtags exploded. Expose Kinex. Langston Files. Serena Blake. Yes, her name was out. Helix had redacted what they could, but the metadata embedded in Walter's files had preserved Serena's involvement. Her name had been in task forces, in encrypted correspondence, and on field reports connected to multiple now declassified investigations. Within hours, her face was on the news. Some called her a hero, others a traitor. She turned off the television and tossed the remote across the room. Walter stirred awake sometime after noon, wincing as he sat up. His voice was hoarse. "It's out, isn't it?" She nodded. "Everywhere." He sighed. "That's what I wanted." "You okay with the target on your back?" Walter smirked. "I already had one. At least now people know why." Serena sat beside him. "You said there were deeper layers. That Kinex was just the surface." He nodded again, slower this time. "There's something called the directorate. It's not a corporation, it's an understanding. An agreement between powerful people to keep markets flowing, no matter the cost. Children, pills, organs. It's all about liquidity, movement. And Margaret, she was a recruiter, but she also vetted federal personnel, the kind who wouldn't ask questions." Serena felt her stomach tighten. "Like Morrison." Walter hesitated, then said quietly, "He's one of them." She stared straight ahead. "I trusted him. He recruited me out of Quantico." "That's why he was chosen," Walter said. "He picks the best, then keeps them just close enough to break if necessary." Serena stood. "Then it's time someone breaks them." That evening, Tariq came upstairs holding a burner phone. "Message for you." She took it. The screen flashed with a number she didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end did. "Blake," said the woman, sharp and efficient. "This is Deputy Director Naomi Pierce. I'm not calling through the Bureau. You and I both know that's no longer safe." Serena didn't speak. "I saw the leak. You did the right thing," Pierce continued. "But the fallout's going to be global. Foreign intelligence agencies are asking questions. The Justice Department is already in panic mode. There's talk of indictments. Langston's on the run. Morrison hasn't been seen in 36 hours. Serena finally replied, "Then we're winning." Pierce didn't confirm or deny it. "You'll need to disappear. We can protect you, but not indefinitely. You've embarrassed too many powerful people." "I don't want protection," Serena said. "I want access." A pause. "To what?" "To the rest of the Hydra." Pierce took a breath. "I might know where its next head is hiding, but it's in Geneva. And it's not just political, it's corporate, deep offshore infrastructure. You'll need more than a badge." "I've already lost that," Serena replied. "Now I'm just cleaning up what they left behind." Another pause. Then Pierce said, "We'll be in touch. Be ready." That night, as Serena sat by the window and watched the last of the storm fade, she realized something. She was no longer fighting for clearance or promotion or reputation. She was fighting because truth once seen demands action. And once you break the silence, you don't go back. 2 days after the consortium papers went public, the world changed, but not the way Serena Blake hoped. There were headlines. Yes, investigations launched. CEOs stepped down. A senator quietly resigned, citing health reasons. But the core, what Walter called the directorate, remained untouched. The news cycle buzzed like a hornet's nest, but the queen hadn't been found. Not yet. Serena watched it all unfold from a Helix outpost buried beneath a co-working hub in downtown Montreal. On the surface, the space looked like a tech startup incubator. But 4 levels underground, Helix's operatives tracked encrypted chatter from Zurich to Dubai. She sat in a steel chair, studying a screen filled with routing data, bank transfers, medical shipments, logistics manifests. It was like chasing smoke through a thunderstorm. But one name kept surfacing: Kinex Geneva, a subsidiary of Kinex Holdings registered under multiple shells. Its executives had no public profiles. Its board meetings were held off record. It moved medical equipment through private hangars in Switzerland with 0 customs inspections. It was clean. Too clean. "You're not going to find a trail," said Reese Drummond, Helix's field director, appearing in the doorway with his signature scowl. "You'll find illusions of one: smoke and gold plating." Serena didn't look away from the screen. "Then I'll light a match." He stepped closer. Geneva isn't like Charlotte. No quick escapes. No local allies. The people running Kinex own entire voting blocks in the Swiss parliament, and their private security isn't made of ex-military. They're still military. "Good," Serena said. "They won't panic. That's when they slip." Reese studied her. "Why are you really doing this? Blake, it's not about justice anymore. Is it?" "No," she said flatly. "It's about exposure. It's about making sure the next girl taken from her home never vanishes into a system no one questions." "And if that means you vanish instead," Serena stood, "then I vanish on my terms." Later that night, she met with Walter and Tariq in the operations room. Walter was still recovering, but his mind remained razor sharp. He pointed to a satellite image projected on the wall, a facility outside Geneva near Lake Lucerne. "This is where they store the records," he said. "Hard drives, not cloud-based. Too risky for them now." Tariq frowned. "They're going analog," Walter nodded. "They know the internet isn't their ally anymore. If you want what's left, if you want the real list of names, you have to go in." Serena's eyes narrowed. "Then that's what we do." Tariq leaned forward. "I'm coming with you." "No," Serena said quickly. "You've already risked too much." He shook his head. "You saved me from shrinking in the face of bigotry. You showed me what action looks like. I'm not staying behind." Walter gave a small smile. "He's stubborn. You'll like that." Serena sighed. "Then you both understand this is a one-way ticket. We hit the core. We hit it loud. After that, it's not just the directorate coming for us. It's everyone who benefited from their silence." Walter raised a brow. "Which is?" "Most of the world." "Exactly." She turned back to the map. A red dot blinked in the center of the facility. "The heart of the machine," Serena whispered. "Where the records breathe. Where silence is traded for power." Tariq's voice was soft but steady. Let's shut it down. Serena made her preparations in the early hours before dawn. A new identity, a forged diplomatic clearance, 2 burner phones, 1 loaded pistol, 1 encrypted drive. Helix's pilot would fly her and Tariq into Geneva under a medevac cover. Walter would stay behind, coordinating from Helix Europe. As she zipped her bag shut, she took one last look at the safe house, the maps, the red string, the faces of the lost. She didn't say goodbye. She wasn't done. Not until the last name was known. Not until the light burned through every hidden corridor of power. The counterstrike had begun. Geneva looked serene under a silver-gray sky. Tree-lined boulevards, stone fountains, and silent trams gave the illusion of peace. But below the calm, Serena Blake knew monsters moved. The city was quiet the way powerful places often were. Rich enough to make problems disappear. Quiet enough to keep secrets buried. She and Tariq stood at the edge of Lake Lucerne, watching the gentle ripples push against the dock. The air was sharp with morning chill, but the cold didn't reach Serena's skin. She was focused. The Helix medevac van idled behind them, engine humming softly. Inside was their cover false IDs, uniforms, and forged documents linking them to a medical transfer unit from Zurich. A fabricated patient file in the name of Mr. Walter Simmons completed the narrative. Their destination sat just beyond the tree line, a private logistics facility run by Kinex Geneva, protected by biometric access points, underground corridors, and more than a dozen armed guards, all under the pretense of transporting high-value medical shipments. But Helix Intel said otherwise. It was a vault, a record-keeping hub, a secure nerve center where hard drives, client logs, financial reports, and names were kept in physical form, no cloud storage. No remote access, the ultimate insurance policy for a criminal empire that no longer trusted digital firewalls. And tonight, Serena intended to break into it. They entered the facility through the rear loading dock. The guard at the gate barely looked at their IDs, trusting the medevac van's insignia and the urgency on Serena's forged transfer sheet. Tariq played the role of junior medical technician. Quiet, helpful, invisible. Serena pushed a gurney draped in a blanket. Beneath it, hidden in the hollow frame, was a collapsible infiltration kit, lockpicks, signal jammers, a suppressed pistol, and 2 small EMP grenades. They passed through a long corridor of sterile white tile and automatic doors. Cameras blinked lazily in the corners, not yet suspicious. A Kinex administrator met them halfway, clipboard in hand. "We weren't expecting a drop tonight," he said, flipping pages. Serena answered without hesitation. Zurich had a contamination alert. "We're diverting through Geneva to avoid protocol conflict. Category 3 pathogen risk." The man's face paled slightly. Bureaucrats always folded under medical jargon. "Take Bay 4, he muttered, "and sanitize after unloading." Serena nodded once, and they rolled forward. Bay 4 was quiet. As soon as the doors hissed shut, Serena moved. She flipped the gurney, pulled out the gear, and handed Tariq a small jamming beacon. "We've got 20 minutes tops before this area logs activity out of pattern." He activated the beacon, drowning nearby comms in digital static. Serena opened a maintenance hatch and led them down a narrow staircase into the bowels of the facility, where the climate control units and power lines converged. Below that, Helix had assured her was the vault. After 5 minutes of crawling through a steel duct, they reached a hatch welded into the floor. Serena used a magnetic drill to bore through the panel bolts. The metal groaned softly, then popped free. Below was darkness, and then light sensors triggered, revealing a massive server chamber. Unlike cloud-based racks, these were analog safes, shielded drives, labeled and organized. There were thousands, each one etched with ID codes, shipment tags, initials. One in particular caught her eye: D01 Gen, Blackwell, Dear Alpha. She opened it. Inside were 3 encrypted drives, a ledger book, and a set of handwritten invoices. Serena scanned the papers, her pulse rising. The names, the signatures, government contractors, politicians, international judges, and beneath one file, a seal she hadn't seen in years: U.S. Intelligence Oversight Committee. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just trafficking. This was institutional. They weren't smuggling behind the government's back. They were the government. Tarek's voice came through the headset. "We've got movement upstairs. They're scanning for irregular signals." Serena pulled 3 drives, stuffed them in a lead-lined pouch, and sealed the vault behind her. As they crawled back up the duct, footsteps echoed above. Someone was already in Bay 4. She held up her hand. Tarek stopped. 1 floor above, a voice said, "Secure the perimeter. If she's here, we don't let her leave alive." Another voice, "Langston's orders?" "No, Morrison's." Serena's heart hardened. Her mentor, her recruiter, her betrayer. They emerged from the vent behind the waste incinerator bay. A small service door waited just ahead, marked emergency exit, staff only. Serena looked at Tariq. Now. They burst through the door into the open air. Behind them, alarms wailed. Ahead, the Helix van was already rolling forward. They jumped in, doors slamming shut. As the van sped into the Geneva morning, Serena clutched the pouch of stolen drives. Inside them was the power to burn an empire. And for the first time, the shadows weren't chasing her. She was chasing them. Geneva never knew what hit it. Within 48 hours of the infiltration, Serena Blake was back in a Helix safe house in the outskirts of Lyon. The drives were decrypted, verified, and duplicated by trusted hands across 3 continents. Every file, every name, every transaction that had once been hidden behind layers of diplomatic immunity and corporate smokescreens was now exposed. And it was global. The fallout was immediate. Langston Medtrans collapsed within hours of the first press leak. Its stock plummeted. Board members vanished. Interpol issued warrants. But the real shockwave came when the names from the encrypted files were released. Judges, diplomats, intelligence officers. And at the center of them all was Assistant Director Charles Morrison, Serena's mentor, listed as the domestic liaison for the Directorate's North American operations. He had been her recruiter, her protector, and her betrayer. Serena watched the news from a rooftop, cold wind brushing through her hair. Her face wasn't on any broadcast now. Helix had erased her digital footprint just as thoroughly as the Directorate once buried its crimes. "You broke it," Walter Simmons said, stepping beside her. He looked older now, but lighter, somehow. "No," Serena replied. "I exposed it." He gave her a tired smile. "That's the first step." Nearby, Tariq joined them, holding a flash drive. The backup copies, encrypted, off the grid. If anything happens to us, the world still gets the truth. Serena took the drive and slipped it into her coat. She didn't speak of revenge, only of resolve. Later that night, she boarded a small civilian flight to South America under a new alias. She wasn't going home. There was no home anymore. There was only the mission. And missions don't end with headlines. They end when the cycle of silence is shattered for good. She glanced down at her wrist, where her grandmother's bracelet still sat, faded, worn, but whole. A reminder of where she came from, of why she couldn't stop now, of every girl locked in a shipping container, of every name still buried in coded ledgers. The directorate wasn't dead, but now it was bleeding. And Serena Blake had no intention of letting it heal. Not until the circle was broken. For good. Certainly, here's a 200-word story message theme statement in English, summarizing the core emotional and philosophical message behind the full narrative. This story is a reflection of what happens when silence protects power and truth becomes a threat. At its heart, breaking the circle is about the courage to confront not only enemies outside the system, but betrayals within it. Serena Blake represents more than an agent. She symbolizes every individual who dares to speak out when others remain quiet. The directorate thrives on secrecy, on people turning their heads for comfort, profit, or fear. But truth, once revealed, has a momentum of its own. It disrupts. It demands action. It changes people. Serena's journey shows that justice doesn't come from titles or badges, but from relentless conviction. The story also honors those who assist quietly: Tariq, Walter, the forgotten victims, people whose names may never trend, but whose actions shift the world. Ultimately, this is not just a tale of conspiracy and takedown. It's a call to accountability, a reminder that systems don't become corrupt overnight, and they don't get fixed by waiting. They break only when brave people choose to be the break. Because sometimes, the only way to fight a machine designed to erase you is to become the storm that makes it unforgettable.